You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. Hey there, how's it going?
Good. I lived with my grandmother when I was younger in the summertime in Cumberland, Wisconsin. And we're Native Americans, we're Ojibways. And we've always had stories of Bigfoot and stuff like that. So we were, about 8 of my cousins and I, we were playing outside at night. It was already getting dark. And we were down probably about a block away from my grandmother's house, playing around in the woods down by a swamp. And we started to hear something at the time. It sounded like it was saying, yummy, 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 yummy. And we all stopped and we started listening, and it kept going. And then we heard another one off to our side, on the other side of us. And we started crying, and we took off running back to my grandmother's house. And when we all got inside, all of us were crying. You know, we're like 10 years old. And my grandmother comes out of the bedroom and, asks, why is everybody crying? And we tried to tell her that we heard somebody saying yummy, yummy, yummy to us. And that's what scared us. And then, she kind of told us to knock it off, and we didn't hear anything like that. So probably about 30 years later, I get into law enforcement, and I go back to work in that area. And another one of our tribal members reported hearing one and seeing one in her outside of her house. So naturally, we went down and took the complaint. And probably about another month after that, one of the Bigfoot societies came around and started to investigate that. Well, I happened to come across them down by a lake, and I go down and say, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Oh, we're part of the Bigfoot Society here, and we're here to investigate. Oh, okay. So I kind of forgot about my experience and just kind of started listening to them. And one guy said, hey, I got one recorded. Do you want to hear it? So I humored them. I said, yeah, I want to hear it. And the guy brought out his recorder, and he started to play it. And right away, it started to say, yummy, 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 the exact same thing that I heard when I was 10 years old. And right away, it brought tears to my eyes, and I kind of got choked up, and the guy could tell, and he asked me, hey, what's going on? And I told him my story, and he said, well, I'm honest to say that you probably did hear one that night.
My goodness, that's incredible. So how many years between the two events, do you think?
So it had to be, like I said, when I was, it had to be 85-ish when I heard when we first heard that. And then I started working for the police department in 2002. It was probably 2005 when when we had the tribal member reported. And then a month after that is when I met with the Bigfoot Society.
That's incredible. I wonder if that was maybe the BFRO that was up there. Who knows? There could be some regional ones too. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that story. I appreciate you coming up. Is this a conversation I can use on my podcast?
Sure. I've
Awesome.
told it before. I've told it before to other people. So yeah, it's definitely something I'd never forget.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming up. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Hey there. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Hey, great. What brings you up today?
Well, you know what? I've come by your show here a couple times, and I'm kind of particular about who I want to talk to. You know what I mean? Who I want to give my story to. So I'm kind of particular about that. And you look pretty good, so I thought, you know what? I'll get on here and tell you
Thanks.
my story if you want to hear it. You know,
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
it. So my story begins in around 1984. Before I knew anything, I mean, I'd seen Bigfoot books when I was a kid and all that, but I'm 57, just to give you an idea how old I am. But um, so in 1984, we're up in West Virginia, and we're in this trailer that we're living in. My mother, me and my brother, and our next door neighbor. And we just hear this lady screaming in the woods. I mean, it's just rattling the trailer. And we're like, what is going on? So we opened up the door to the trailer. It had a back door on it. Didn't have any stairs or whatever, but it was right backed up against a hill. And this is important to remember, by the way. So we are backed up against a hill. The setting is on the side of a mountain. And there's no houses behind us, but there are houses beside us. And this is up in the Appalachians, so you know. Um, so yeah, this thing is screaming, and we're thinking it's a woman being killed. And it sounded so much like what you would think that would sound like. But it was very, very, very loud. And so we shut the door, loaded up all of our guns, put one in each of the doors. And, I called up my stepdad at the time. I was like, hey, what's going on up here? And they're claiming it's a lion, it's a this or that or whatever. But, we're still scared. And that's that. So after that night, nothing happened. We did walk in the woods the next day to look to see if we could find something up there. There was nothing. So that was 1984. We didn't know what that was. Who knows? But later on, I did put two and two together, and we figured this out. But so in 1986, this is a couple years later, um, and this is just so you guys have an idea too. This is around the Morgantown area,
Okay.
up in the mountains. Um, but I won't give any specifics.
hmm
So we're pulling up this cool October evening, just before sundown, and I told my stepdad, "Hey, I'm going to run up on the hill." We had this hill up there; it's a flat field on top of this mountain that we lived below, and there was enough. The sun was up high enough, and it was up high enough that you could still hunt that for a good half hour or so before, or maybe even an hour. Anyway, I got out of the truck. I was going to run up the hill. I didn't have anything with me. I wasn't armed or nothing. But I went walking up the hill and, going up there at a fairly quick pace, I guess you could say. And I was just trying to get up there so that I could get back to my house if I saw anything. And so as I walk up this hill, as I'm getting up the top of the hill. So as you know, as the hill caps off, right, it starts to get flat on top, right? So I see this head, this huge hairy head. And since I'm looking uphill, I'm looking at, the head of this thing. And so I walk up a few more feet so that I can see more of it because I'm curious at this point what this is.
hmm
And then it just stops me in my tracks. I could see the shoulders. I could see the hair glinting in the sun, plain as day. Uh, I didn't see any ears on it. People have asked me that before. I didn't see any ears. It had real, um, manicured hair as opposed to some of the other Bigfoot things you see where they're all hairy and dirty and all that. This thing was groomed and it was like an athlete. Uh, it was it was built kind of like that, from what I could see. Now, at this point, now this is all going down real quick, right? Um,
hmm
I uh, I had a fear come over me that I have never experienced in my life since then. Uh, it was a fear that I couldn't even explain, and so I was remember looking at it thinking, do not turn around. This is what I was thinking to myself while I'm standing there in dire straits, if you will, with fear. I'm thinking, do not turn around and look at me because I will have a heart attack right here on the ground, right here on the spot. And I was 16 years old by the way at this time. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be just have a heart attack if this thing turns around. And luckily, it kept walking away. And when I realized it took another step going the other direction, that's when I turned around and hauled butt down the hill as fast as I could go. Ran down the hill. And that was my first experience ever seeing a Sasquatch. And so I know they're real. That's for sure. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Now, I'll wind up here a little bit on it. So I contacted a couple people that lived on that hill years later, and one of the girls that lived up there on that hill told me a story where she said she was right behind my house on that hill picking blackberries. And she said my mother had walked off to go take a piss. And she goes, I was picking blackberries, and then I just looked up. Here's a Sasquatch looking right at me, she said. And it had to have been the same one that I'm assuming that I saw on that hill. And this was around 1986, so the same time frame. And she said tears just started pouring down my face because I was so scared. And she said I turned around to look where my mother was at because she was so frightened. And she said I turned back around and it was gone. That is really weird, right? It's just gone.
That is some wild stuff. So regarding the first sighting that you had, how far away was that from you again?
It was probably about 30 yards. It wasn't very far at all.
Yeah, that's just over a tennis court away. That's not bad.
It was. Yeah, it was about like that, about a tennis court. Yeah, it wasn't very far at all. And like I said, the sun was shining on that hill, and I guess the clarity that I had of the sun gleaming off the fur or the hair, it was like hair. It wasn't fur. It looked like hair. I'll agree with a lot of other people when they say that. But yeah, but this one was groomed, and it didn't look like some of the other Bigfoots that I see on TV. So that's when when you look around, you're looking at all these videos, and you're like, man, that's not exactly what I saw, but that looks pretty authentic,
Right. Right.
So there's something going on there. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but hey, I got some more story for you here. Now, not that I'm a Sasquatch magnet, because I'm not. But if you're in the right place at the right time, unfortunately, some stuff is probably going to happen. So wind this up to 2008, and I'm living in Texas. I grew up here as well, and I'm out in East Texas, and I'm hog hunting in the dark. So I've got all camo on and all that. Now, I didn't have all the camo on because I was trying to hide my body in the dark, but all those insects out there in the dark as the summer, it just eats you alive. So I'm really covered up for that. And I have a starlight scope with me on a 17 HMR. Now, if you know what a 17 HMR is, that's really not a very powerful round for, big game or anything like that. It's for all small game. Now, I had been shooting hogs with it and just having fun. So I did have a 308 with me as well, but it only had a regular scope on it. And I had a pig light out there about 70 yards away where I could see in the dark with the 308. So I could actually shoot a 308 in the dark with the regular scope. But a 17 HMR, on the other hand, with a starlight scope on it, Raccoonville, right? I mean, it's just not a very big round. But anyway, I'm in this tree, and it's real quiet, man. It just got real quiet. The same thing you hear from other stories about hunters out there. I mean, everything shut up. The crickets shut up. The mouses quit moving. All the racket and noise that had been around me earlier that night had just shut up. Everything. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And then I hear this tree explode. I mean, just like a wooden tree, like a tree that the tree that I could picture in my head was like an old tree just being bent over and then just exploding. And you would have thought I would have been scared, but I wasn't. I was like, what? I actually remember thinking to myself, well, I guess trees do make noise when no one's around. Well, of course I'm there, but you know what I mean? You get the point, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm still up in the tree, and I'm looking around trying to figure out why that tree just exploded when everything was completely silent and quiet. And it wasn't very far from me. It was probably 50 yards from me. So I just sit there in the tree. What else? I'm there to hunt hogs. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm thinking is running around out there. I don't know what just happened to that tree. And behind me, I hear something. And I'm in a, by the way, I'm in a tree stand, just so you know. I'm in a tree stand about 12 feet off the ground. And it's a 2-man tree stand, so I got a little bit of leeway to walk around on this platform. So I hear something behind me, and I'm thinking, oh man, Hog's gonna walk in on me. That's cool. I'll just kill him right here. You're right in front of me. And so I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never comes out. And I'm thinking, what? Why did it not walk? God, that's really weird. I did throw some corn and stuff out there in front of my tree stand just for giggles, just to, in case some hog did come through there, it would stop maybe, and I would get a chance to pop it. Anyway, so I decide to stand up in my tree stand, and I turn around and I turn that starlight scope on, and I look down straight beside me on the ground, and I see this human-like body laid out completely flat on the ground, but its hands were like tucked underneath it, and its feet were straight up and down. It was like, and you would have thought I was freaking, I would have freaked out seeing this, but I didn't. I didn't know what it was. Now, when you have a starlight scope, a lot of guys own them these days, so they know what they look like. It's a green, black, and yellow kind of, maybe some white sometimes. But this thing that I was looking at was not very big. It was only about 6.5, maybe 7 feet tall. It wasn't very big, but it was real round. It had a real round gut on it. And now at this point, when I'm looking at this, I am wondering what it is, and I'm not just going to shoot something that I don't know what it is, right? So I remember I sat back down in my seat, and I'm thinking, what was that? And I'm thinking, well, let me take another look. So I stand back up. I got my scopes already on. I look back at there again, and it had moved all the way up against the tree, and it had its head, if you could picture this, it had its neck butted up against the bottom of the tree, and it had reached up and it was holding on to this branch, and the branch come all the way up to where I was. It was a real small little branch. It wasn't even a half-inch thick, but it was real long, and it came up that 12 feet where I was at, and it started waving that branch with his hand. And mind you, there's no noise, there's no wind, no nothing, but that branch is waving now in front of my face. And now you would have thought I would have just been shooting like a wild man or whatever, but I didn't. At this point, I'm thinking, what is that? But that was about the same time I was fixed to stand back up and look back down there, which I did do. And that's how I could see it, what it was doing. And you would have, once again, you would have thought I'd have freaked out when been shooting, but I didn't. I still didn't know what it was. I still didn't know if it was a man that was effing with me or something else. And I didn't think it was a man. I'm out here on private land, so I just sit back down in the seat, and it backs back out. I hear it back out, and it walks off. And that was my East Texas. I'm going to call it a Sasquatch. I don't know what else to call it. But
I don't know what else you would.
Yeah, what else would you call that?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I had heard some noises out there. At the time, I wasn't familiar with Sasquatch calls, like the whoops and stuff. But I had heard some of those noises out there. I had taken just for giggles, I had taken one of those old satellite dishes that you get for dish TV, and I put a recorder on the end of it, at the end where normally a signal would be coming through, and I knew that sound would bounce off of that and hit that thing. Mm-hmm. And dude, I picked up all kinds of crazy sounds out there in those woods. That works really good. So if we got any good fans on here, you guys want to do something on the cheap but works, use one of those old satellite dishes, put a recorder on the end of that thing, and you'll be surprised what you'll catch.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's making your own parabolic pretty much.
Yeah, on the cheap, man.
Yeah.
So, but that was my East Texas story. I'm not out there currently seeking out Sasquatch or anything like that, but I do keep up online. I pay attention to what's going on, or at least I try to.
Well, man, you've had some really cool encounters over the years. I appreciate you coming up and sharing those. Is this a conversation I can use on the Bigfoot podcast I have?
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Well, thanks for coming up, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me on.
Hello, G. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, doing great. What brings you up today?
Well, I had some questions first and then my story, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
So, where is the majority of in the United States the most sightings at
Well,
or encounters?
let's see. I would say you have a. I mean, there's a few things. Let me bring my map up here. Um, you're gonna have, of course, a better chance if you're. Uh, you know where like the Cascades are that go up from on the Pacific Northwest over there?
Yes.
That's where a ton of reports I get are following that Cascade Range, right? There's a ton of reports in Ohio and Pennsylvania, believe it
Uh
or
huh.
not.
Uh huh.
Um, East Texas is a pretty big hotspot, northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee, southern Missouri. I mean, it's almost like ask where not to go. The Midwest, Nebraska, the like central Midwest can get pretty sparse, but your Pacific Northwest, like if you had one shot to try to go to a place, I would say um, Clackamas County, Oregon,
Uh huh.
or Pierce County, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
look that up.
so my tale goes all the way back to '92 when I was 16, and our neighbors were really good friends. Um, like I grew up, with my friend, and his parents were real close with my parents and stuff. And they decided to move to Montana, and they bought this big plot of land. And um, my friend's dad was kind of like an off the gritter type guy, and that was the plan for them. So the first summer, or not, I'm sorry, not summer. It was the first hunting season that they had. While they were there, they invited us to come stay with them. So my parents and I, we packed up from Texas and we went up there, and we had planned to spend 2 weeks up there. And so all the boys, all the men go off hunting this one day. So we're in this big area that's pretty brushy and tree covered, stuff I had never seen being here in Texas. And there's this trail that the dad described as having a lot of deer come through. So we're there, setting up these makeshift blinds, and it's about maybe 100 yards away from the football field, away from where the trail is. And we hadn't seen anything like all evening. It was starting to get kind of late. And then finally at the very end, when it was just going to become nightfall and we had to stop, this thing comes lumbering through that we can see from where our blind is at. And we got scared because we thought it was a bear. And right before it gets into the brush, because it was quadruped, it turned into biped. It stood up and literally just looked at us and moved off into the brush and the trees and stuff. And we were scared. We didn't know what to do. And my dad was like, we should investigate it. We were 16 and 15. We didn't want it to go. But right before we took a few steps forward, you just heard these two loud knocks, like what everyone describes as like trees getting hit. And then every animal in the forest, you could say, just ran out of nowhere. And that was it. And we went the following morning and we found the tracks of this, I'm assuming Sasquatch, I want to say it. And they were there. They were as real as day, but where we were at, it was very rural. So he had to wait because he wanted to make a cast. And by the time we got back with supplies, like the next day and stuff, there in that, I guess that part of Montana, it was real rainy. So
Mm.
there wasn't anything left for us to do with it. But that was, that was my introduction to Sasquatch at 16.
That's wild. What part of Montana was that in?
Helena? I believe that's how you
Elena.
pronounce it.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me look it up. I'm just curious. Okay. Well, yeah, that is, let's see.
And I had never spoken to anyone
Yeah.
about this, but when I found your TikTok, I was like, maybe I should tell this story.
Wow, I appreciate you coming up. That's a huge deal to share something like that for the first time. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate your time. And I'm really interested in everyone that comes on and their encounters as well, see if there's anything similar to like what occurred with me.
Absolutely. Is this a conversation I can use on I have a Bigfoot podcast or
Oh yeah, you can use it for sure.
okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely feel free to hang out and you should uh you should start learning a lot of stuff from other people's encounters. But yeah, thank you for being here, man.
Alrighty, thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Ronnie Alec here again.
Ronnie, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. I'm from Burns Lake, BC here. I've been trying to get a hold of you last week here. I have 3 sightings that I want to talk about. One was way up at Helene Lake about 15 years ago when my dad took him up there. He was talking about old stuff and that. We're coming back down. And then all of a sudden, right in about 40 feet from us, he just about got on the road. You can see his brown hair he turned, swung around, walked back in the bush. And from there, we couldn't believe it at first. But that's not the first time. The second time, when I was about 10 years ago, coming back from Babine Lake at Donnis Landing. About 11 miles from Burns Lake here, you go up to Babine Road. And right there, that was in May. It was about 7 o'clock, 7:30, sunset. And I was coming around the corner. And right there, I couldn't believe it. I just turned right there and right in front, probably about good 40 feet, 50, and I stopped right there. And then this thing had a long hair, probably about 10 feet, and that was 10 years ago. And he just went right across, and it just gave me the chills, and I can't believe nobody won't, something like that. Nobody won't believe you. So all that time, and then that same place. And I tell you, he went across, and I stopped where he went across. Still, I got the goosebumps from that thing. And he just went across like in probably about 8-10 steps, and he was gone. And how fast he went. And then that same place about 5 years ago, coming down, not coming down, but me and my friend making woods there. And both of us, we had chainsaw going and cutting woods. And all of a sudden, we dropped 2 trees down and we're cutting away in that same area. And right behind us. And man, you can hear that. And all of a sudden, I stopped my saw and I told my friend to stop his. And I tell you, their echo. I can hear his dad. I can hear the dad. I can hear the mom. And we can hear the little one. They're all just warning us. Like they gave us the goosebump. You can hear their echoes from quite a ways. Quite a ways. And then I told my buddy, I said, this is the same area where I seen that. Let's get out of here and load those fireworks up. We'll never ever move quick in our life that time. He gave us a goosebump, and that's the second time. And then last 3 weeks ago, another incident happened was my niece's husband. They were supposed to meet them down in Noranda Landing in Grand Isle, past Grand Isle, at the old fort there. They were supposed to meet his father, and that was 3 weeks ago. Instead of, they were heading the right direction, but there was a turnoff up to the left. We go to Grand Isle, BC, and then up towards Fort Babine. And once there, they got on the road and they were heading down to Smithers Landing instead. And then right there, about a mile, I guess, down the Smithers Landing, they heard some big steps, footsteps. So they stopped and they looked over to their left. And right there, he was looking at them. They got the goosebumps. They're never, ever going to look like they, till this day, nobody won't believe what's happening around our area here in Burns Lake and Babine Lake. So there's lots of sightings. And they phoned the Fish and Wildlife when they seen that Bigfoot. And the Fish and Wildlife, they said that you're not the only ones. There's 3 people total of you seen that Bigfoot around in Smithers Landing area.
Really?
So, yeah, it's there's quite a few around here that, there's a lot of logins and a lot of things that's happening around here. Lots of things, and especially in Babine Lake, my friend also. They were out fishing around, and then that was about 8 years ago, and his cousin was taking a video on his phone. It's so just beautiful and calm. And then all of a sudden he turned around his back and taking a video. Richard, look, what's that coming? Waves coming towards them. And then within 3 seconds, he went underneath the aluminum boat. And I tell you, he just about fell off the boat, both of them. And then right there, he videoed the whole thing. The phone fell off his hands and into the boat, and then they turned around. That motor just ripped that thing right out his back behind. And they were looking at the big, huge tail was going back down. As probably they said about at least about somewhere around 10 feet. And it just ripped the motor out, so they had to paddle to Bear Island, that same Babine Lake area. And they phoned the Fish and Wildlife and the RCMP. They came out to pick them up. And they told them the whole story, and they showed the footage too, the phone. But there's lots of things happening around here in Burns Lake and Babine Lake area. So there's lots of sightings.
That last one, you're saying that was a Bigfoot in the water?
No, this was whatever it was in Babine Lake. They'll talk to you about it. It's their tail is so wide, probably about something like 10 feet wide. It went underneath their boat and ripped the motor off the aluminum boat, and it just went flying up and into the lake. And they don't know what it was.
Okay, so you might have some sort of lake monster in that lake then.
Yeah, and then just 3 years ago, we had a derby going down here in Don's Landing in Babine Lake. Me and the wife went across, had a 10-pound line on that. And my wife started screaming. And all of a sudden, looked back and see the rod was just really bending down. So I stopped the motor and I grabbed the fishing rod from her. And I tell you, I cannot reel that thing in. It's just like 20-pound line, and it's just like going bzzz out with it. Within 7 minutes, half of the line, and then just broke right off. There's lots of things happening around Babin Lake and BC here, so lots of sightings. So if people want to know about where they can find Bigfoot or whatever it is in the lake too, so there's something going on. But
There you go. Well, I appreciate you coming up and sharing your accounts. These are incredible, and we've never heard from this area of British Columbia before.
yeah, you guys are, you want to send some people up here to do some video and do whatever that there you guarantee you guys will find something. Especially up in Talman Lake when you can't even see the bottom. When you go out camping, when we went up trapping, we went up there flying with a helicopter and we couldn't even see the bottom in Talman Lake. And also our elders, they used to set a net up there. And one day, the next day, they were trying to take the net out so long that whatever it is, it just wrapped right around it. They just let go. And like with the elders, they say that underneath the lake between Talban, Auger Lake, Babin Lake, and goes out to the ocean, it's all connected. That's what they were saying. And we believe that because underneath that, there's whatever that's out there. We have so much of people want to talk about it, but not, nobody can believe our story. That's what's happening around in our area here in BC.
Ronnie, I appreciate you coming up. Do you mind if I use this conversation in a Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Sure, you can ask these boys too. About 3 weeks ago when they seen this Bigfoot, there's a lot of people. You can ask the Fish and Wildlife here in Smithers that they reported the sightings where they seen this Bigfoot. So there's more than 3 people.
So hold on. You're saying if I look up Smithers Fish and Wildlife in British Columbia?
Yeah.
What is that called? I'm trying to look for it. It's the town of Smithers.
Smithers, BC. It's Buckley Valley. And Smithers Landing and Fort Babine are connected in that area. You can talk to these people too if you want to. We can arrange that, and they'll all come out and talk about it, and because there's a lot of story about whatever that people out there are talking about. It's real. There's definitely no doubt about it. There's lots of Bigfoots, different kind of animals out there that they're talking about. It's true. So I believe it myself because I experienced it. I seen it and how they move. And I tell you, this is what you have to believe that people are seeing. So many of them out there, different kinds of colors, and this one with dark black, long hair. And we have tracks sometimes wherever we go hunt out there, and in October we see tracks. So there's lots of sightings, no doubt about it. So be nice if you guys can talk to us, and we'll tell you the full true story. That's what people are saying out there. So for you, thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ronnie Alec. So from Burzek, BC, Lake Babine, Wyoming. So
very good. Hey, we'll chat later. Thank you so much for coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, that's a conversation. That's why I do this live. If you're able to come up, um, Jill, I'd love to talk to you. I hear that you are related to the Hoopa tribe. Hi there, how are you?
Hi. Sorry, I just was having some technical difficulties with my thumbs. So
Oh, no
I
problem. I
kept
saw your
jumping on and off.
comments.
Yeah, they those people used to participate in our ceremonies many years ago, before my grandfather was born. He was born in 1909 or 1906. And he's long gone since gone, but um he talked about the stories that he was told as a child, um, that those people used to participate in our ceremonies. And the way, if anyone's been to Hoopa, the way our ceremonies work is, Hoopa is located in Northern California.
Hmm.
So we're at the bottom of kind of like the Pacific Northwest. And our ceremonies are shared by the three tribes, Hoopa, Yurok, and Karuk. And they are, when our ceremonies happen, usually, especially our healing ceremonies, the Hoopa dance, then the Yurok dance, and then the Karak dance. So they each take a turn, and at one point, these people also used to participate and take a turn, and they also had regalia that they would bring. But there was a disagreement at some point, and they took their stuff and said that they wouldn't be back um, with us because of this disagreement. And I will say his name, Mening, which means, kind of loosely translated, means he's the one in charge of the lids or the mountains.
Oh my goodness, I love that. That's incredible. That is so
So
cool.
he's not seen necessarily as a bad person. And of course, family and friends have seen him. I've never been so fortunate as to see him. I would love to. Um, but the Tule River tribe, which is more in kind of
Yep.
central, it's probably about 7-8 hours away south of Hoopa. It's they actually have petroglyphs with
Hmm.
a good Bigfoot and a bad Bigfoot. So the red eyes, and when I say bad, they're the unkind ones. They have red eyes, and then the others have yellow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's interesting because I've taken a lot of encounters, and those are things that come up. It's either red or yellow eyes. So you're saying there's a distinction between if they're good or bad going off of what type of eyes they have.
Well, yes, that's what I've been told. That's not our story.
Wow.
That's not our Hoopa stories.
Okay.
That's the Tule River. That's
Tule River.
their stories, which is kind of interesting, right?
It's very interesting. I've talked to who did I talk to? I talked to Bear from who is I'm trying to remember the current it's not medicine man
So
anymore.
Bigfoot's.
It's like a spiritual leader. Apologies, I'm saying it wrong. But he was involved with the Tule River um tribe, and he had some really interesting things going on down there. Um so when you say that they used to be there with regalia,
Hmm.
can you explain what that means?
So for us, well, so you see my picture there, and we have a lot of, we use a lot of abalone shells, dentalium shells, which are like the mollusks, right, that grow along the Pacific Northwest. And I'm assuming pine nuts, like pine nuts are kind of a big thing these days, but a long time ago it was like a poor man's bead. Um, so I would think, and we also used a lot of pileated woodpecker heads, scalps in a lot of our regalia, along with our otter and mink
Okay.
hides. So I would assume that when they said that they also owned regalia, it was probably very similar to ours. So they had not beaver pelt, well, maybe beaver pelts, but pelts from mink and otters, and probably had things with decorated with abalone and other types of
Mm.
shells. And I'm just making an extrapolation here. I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have
I
no idea what
understand.
kind of regalia he
Yeah.
had, but if it was the same thing, and that's kind of like certain people hold regalia. So like our white deer skins, our albino deer skins, they're used. We're actually in the middle of our world renewal ceremonies right now. We just finished our white deerskin dance and are going to be getting ready to do the jump dance.
Is it okay if I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I've followed
Um,
for you for years, so I'm really excited about
Absolutely.
this.
Um, so I've interviewed um, a few different First Nations people, and they all have stories about how sometimes um, they will show up on the edge of ceremonies.
Hmm.
Sometimes when there's drums involved. Have you ever heard that as well? Like they will show up on the edges of the ceremonies?
No, but some of our sacred areas, they're off limits after the ceremonies. They're off limits usually uh, because our belief is that the little people and the others come and do their ceremonies right after us. So nobody goes into those places following ceremony because they're left for the others to do theirs.
So that's extremely interesting. I've also talked to an individual of the Yurok tribe as well,
Hmm.
within the last year, and a lot of people will allude to that in, so let's say not exactly the Hoopa area, but like usually we're talking about like Bluff Creek and
Hmm.
the Patterson Gimlin film site,
Yeah,
and they usually will allude to
Trinity
there's
Alps.
areas, yeah, exactly. There's areas there where just people do not go, and they're somehow related to you're saying like the other people. Um,
I'm that's just the term I'm using to try to
yeah,
make it
yeah, yeah,
more
yeah,
simplified. Um, yes, there's a place called the Go Road, which was a road
yep,
that was, you've heard of it,
yep,
right?
yeah.
And that's actually in a very sacred area that was used by all of the surrounding tribes. And in that particular area, it is. And what's interesting is, I had family who worked for U.S. Forest Service out that way, who it was kind of a joke, I guess, to have them go out and mark timber in the area, but it can be a very eerie area. And we have rhododendron bushes, lots,
Hmm.
which people usually get from a nursery and plant, but they're wild. They're a wild plant that grows all over the place in this particular area. And I've never been there. I mean, I've been there, but I've never gotten out of my car and walked around in the woods. But I'm told that you can clearly see that, they actually like to kind of pile those bushes up and lay in them. Like it looks like something lays in there. And the other thing is
That's
like an odor, like, sometimes there's a very strong odor and it's really not a pleasant smell at all that you can say, oh, he's around.
that's interesting as well. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Then there's a lot of stuff I've actually cut out of interviews because I take this extremely seriously, and Um, yeah, there's that area around the Go Road, I think I've never been there, but I feel like it's to be taken extremely seriously. Um, so that's cool to hear that from your side as well. I hear from a lot of people, they will say something to the effect of, I saw it disappear or I saw it fade away, or there's even accounts where it like comes through an area. Is there anything that you've ever heard of that would kind of lend credence to that, where it's able to disappear or maybe travel to other places, other dimensions, anything like that?
Um, I I haven't heard that. I guess just on a personal basis, I've always suspected that they were interdimensional beings because if they were coming and participating in our ceremonies, um, and when I say, each tribe will take a turn at doing the ceremony, that's usually like 40 people. So, you know, I would be I would think that when they said that they participated in our ceremonies, that meant there were at least 40 of them or more who would come, right? Of all
My
ages,
goodness.
all age range. So the the flip side of that is, in Hoopas, our fire pits in our traditional houses have been dated back to 10 to 12,000 years. So we've been in the same place for that long. So where did they live, right? Because there's no trace of them living any things, but when we're talking about having regalia, that all requires a certain process of, hand manipulation, tool development. But I haven't heard, uh, there's not a place that they live. And it was interesting because I was listening to another Bigfoot cat podcast, and that they had a medium on there who
Hmm.
said she's made contact with them telepathically, right? And one of the questions she asked them was, what do you miss most, or what have you seen change, or something about like how has the world changed? And one of the things that supposedly the Bigfoot had told her telepathically was that he missed interacting with the tribes, with the native people.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
I thought that was
Uh,
very interesting.
do you feel, would you feel comfortable sharing how the Sasquatch is viewed in Hoopa tradition?
Well, this is like, I'm 60 years old, so
Okay.
my grandparents were all, you know, had served in World War I, which is, you know, the age ranges between their kids. My mom was the youngest of the family. So oftentimes in terms of Bigfoot, this is one of those things where it might be information held family to family. So not
Sure.
necessarily everybody would have the same story or have different stories about it. And I don't think we don't really have stories of them being super destructive
Hmm.
when except during the 1940s and 50s when you had active logging engaged, and um they didn't like people didn't even really talk about it, but they would leave the logging equipment and the oil and drums and stuff up on the landing, and they would come back after the weekend and find them all picked up and thrown over the bank, and lots of big footprints around and things like that. But nobody had any, the response to that, I guess, would be like, well, he doesn't really want us to be here doing what we're doing.
Right. Right.
But nobody was
Absolutely.
ever like hurt. And even my friend who said that the one he saw looked like an orangutan, that him and his family live kind of at the edge. They're the last house as you head out towards kind of the mountain area, towards a place called Horse Linto, which is where sightings have been occurred. Anyway, he said his dogs were barking, and they had a little Pomeranian that was just, barking so hard that it wouldn't take a breath. So they thought it was bears because it was not unusual to have a bear sniffing around at the smokehouse or whatever. So he went out there with his gun. He wasn't going to kill the bear. He was just going to shoot near it and scare it off. So he went up there with his gun, and the little Pomeranian dog was barking at the bottom of this tree, and the big dogs were all sitting on the porch, not saying anything. They were probably sitting back waiting for it to become a snap. And he said on the tree, he looked up to where it was looking. There was this, he said it was the color of an orangutan. And he goes, and I was trying to, he goes, it was sitting on this branch, kind of squatting on this branch. And when, we have some pretty big trees. So when I say branch, um, the branch itself could have been the size of a tree, right? So it's not like a small branch. Um, this thing was kind of squatting on the branch, and then it stood up, and he goes, and I was trying to get my gun to go in it, and I ran in the house. I thought somebody else has to see this besides me. He goes, kind of backed up, but as he was backing up, he said the thing jumped down. He said it was probably about a 9 to 12 foot drop, jumped down on the ground, and then ran down the embankment. And he said it was, very hairy. The hair on its arms was long and drapey, but it was orange color. And he said all I could get out was orangutan. He went into where his wife was and was like, orangutan, orangutan. He was, because my mind was like not even wanting to work.
Wow. And that was on the reservation.
Yeah. Um,
Okay.
but that's the only one that I've actually heard was like there. And he said it was just so I think his story actually ended up on the Bigfoot, with Bobo or Bilbo, ended up
Oh
on
yeah.
that
Okay.
that
Gotcha.
story.
On one of those shows. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And but I knew him. He's gone now, but I knew him
Mm.
really well. And you know he, like, people who say these things, they aren't people who make it. They
Right.
aren't.
Exactly.
you know um so, and when you are raised in the mountains, hunting, fishing, gathering, like, I used to go trout fishing, and we were always walking around. And one of the things that I was taught by my grandfather was that you always sing, our traditional songs, or, make noise, because you have to be talking so that the animals know where you are, and that you don't run into a bear, or, whether it's picking huckleberries or mushrooms or whatever you're gathering, that you are making noise to make certain that the wilderness knows that you're there. And we've had,
Really
hunters
interesting.
who have seen it, who have heard it, and are like, this isn't the whooping. Um, like my son heard the whooping one night, and he said it was big. They didn't wait for it. Um, it was crashing through the woods, and it was making those whooping sounds. And he called me in the middle of the night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, or I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning. I was already in bed, but I go to bed at 9, so I have no concept. So he said that he goes, I will find the sound, because he was trying to imitate, and he's like, I can't do it. And so then he found the sound, and it came off of a sound of a recording that happened in Washington State somewhere.
Okay.
And he said this is the sound it was making. And our men in our area know the sound of every bird. Like, what a blue jay sounds like, what a grouse sounds like, what a quail sounds like, what a woodpecker sounds like, all the sounds around you, and what the animals make. And so when you have someone who has those kind of experiences, who doesn't know the sound, and these are people who will walk miles by themselves, go hunting, out where they have to hike in for 5 hours, and are completely by themselves, and are fine being in the wilderness alone. These aren't people who scare at the slightest thing.
Um, how are and you may not. It's I'm just going to ask it. So let's say you have the current generation of the Hoopa tribe being brought up right now. Are they taught to react to an interaction with a Sasquatch in a certain way?
No,
Okay.
No, I mean, I think most of them would just leave the area. Like if they
Yeah.
saw something, they would just leave and they might tell a few friends. They might not tell everyone. I mean, I don't think we've had anyone with an iPhone be out there being recording. I mean, one of the things is, when you're in the mountain, your iPhone's pretty much useless because there's no
Yeah.
service. So unless you're
Right.
just going to take pictures, most of the time it's not with you. Um, but I haven't heard of anyone recently having those kinds of experiences. These are all almost approaching 20 years now. Doesn't mean
Gotcha.
that they're not there. Doesn't mean that they're not there. It's just that, I think there's a certain amount of healthy respect for, like, if you feel like you're being watched, you probably are, so you leave.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, in Have you ever heard anything where there was a has there ever been like a form of communication between tribal members and Sasquatch, whether that's verbally or using telepathic or anything like that?
I know, when I was asking when my grandpa was telling us this about that they used to, he was always told that they used to come and participate in our ceremonies. It didn't, we didn't think to ask, like, was it talking?
Mm,
Like what language? I mean, because he's talking about a time, a time where Hoopa people would only be speaking Hoopa, our language. And that's kind of the other interesting thing about our tribes is that you have Hoopa, that's Athabascan, you have Yurok, who's Algonquin. When I'm saying Athabascan and Algonquin, I mean language bases, and then you
right.
have the Karak, who are Hokan. So we participated in each other's ceremonies, we intermarried, but we all spoke languages that were as foreign to each other as Chinese and French.
Mm,
So, and there was no known sign language system. So we have to make the broad assumption that because we did intermarry, that we were actually trilingual, which saved us in the sense that the Hoopa people were able to retain much of their Aboriginal territory, not all of it, but much of it, as a result of being able to pick up English so fast and understanding what the soldiers were saying.
right.
So I would say if in fact the Bigfoots do speak a language that a long time ago our ancestors probably spoke it with them, or they had some other form of communication.
Makes sense. Um, are there any things you've ever heard of, like, well, there's some Sasquatch in this area that have four toes as opposed to five, and you've really got to watch out for the four toes. Is that something that's present in the Hoopa culture?
I personally have not heard that. That's not to say that
Okay.
there aren't your stories like that.
Yeah,
Um, but I haven't heard that.
that might just be a Prince of Wales Tlingit thing that I've heard. So, okay, that's cool.
And it might be the same being. I don't know how long these things live.
True, 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 true. Man, wow, this is a really cool conversation.
Hmm.
I love these because it is so extremely rare to be able to talk to someone like yourself who knows the ins and outs of the culture. So I appreciate you coming up and chatting for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I heard my friend there from obviously the Pacific Northwest, and I was like,
Right.
yeah. I was really pleased. I got to go to Alaska and I got to eat some what they call black gold, which is the a golden bearded seal blubber. That was
Oh, nice.
absolutely
That's awesome.
delicious.
That is
Very
awesome.
delicious. Yeah.
Um, Good stuff. Hey, is this a conversation I can use for the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Would you mind sending me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com? It would be cool if I have another question in the future, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. I'd be happy
Okay,
to.
awesome. Well, thank you for coming up
And
and chatting. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. Oh my goodness, that is incredible. That was an incredible conversation.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I was on earlier and I called my buddy to let him know that I shared this story with you.
Okay.
And he reminded me about something I had long forgotten since this happened in the early 90s.
Oh,
But
sure.
but at the end of my story, I told you how my friend's dad wanted to get some stuff to cast the footprint that we found, but he couldn't because it had rained. When he was getting that stuff at that store, the people there recommended that that he talk to the local wildlife, the fish and game. And so in doing so, he started off with his story. I know you're going to find it's crazy. And the wildlife fish and game guy was like, let me guess, you saw something walking through your property? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, we get a lot of that here in Helena.
No way.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool but spooky.
Yeah.
But it was just an overall, I mean, once in a lifetime experience type thing, you know?
That's incredible. That's very cool. Thank you for coming back up to share that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't remember earlier. I mean, but I mean, it's been 30 some odd years, you know?
Oh, totally understandable. That brings up a great, I've never tried to contact fish and game um, departments, and I think I might put that on the list because sometimes I will randomly call places and ask, and sometimes have some people. I mean, I've talked to sheriff deputies in Tennessee, and they've shared their sightings over the phone. It's crazy. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing it, and the people that, you know, at first thought he was going to start talking about a grizzly bear, I guess, because grizzlies
Mhm.
are really prevalent there in Montana. But no, it was the conversation turned real quick when he was like, let me guess, you saw something stand up or walk or whatever it was, however the conversation went. But he was like, not surprised at all.
Absolutely. Well, man, thank you so much for coming up and for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.